screen and you just make it only your beautiful face, and then you just like do all of your hard work and research on the other monitor, and then as we talk about cards, you just drag them over, and then but for the most part we need this in the background because it's actually perfect.
Am I the only one here that's just on a laptop?
I believe so.
Oh, but you have 2 monitors.
Man, 2 monitors is the best. I work as a developer, so they're just like, here, you get 2 monitors the default. If you ask nicely, and by that I mean literally just go, can I have a 3rd monitor, please? You can have a 3rd monitor. I can never go back to just one. I occasionally work from home and don't feel like plugging it into my big old tower of stuff.
Hey there, everybody! Welcome to after another long week of Force of Will. and several events and lots of travel and sleeping in airports to I don't have cards on me to be shuffling like you guys, to the first ever live Teachers Lounge. Let us know if you can actually hear me audio wise. I hope you can. You should hear these guys just fine, but I'm concerned about my audio.
Hey everybody.
But it sounds like we're good. But anyway, I'm joined as always by, up in that corner, Ryan Miles.
Woo!
Over here, Brandan Bremont.
Hi.
And the top 8 that consisted entirely of Frank. So we are here.
A long time.
We are here and ready to talk Force of Will, hanging out with you guys. Want to go over our topics for tonight. We are going to start by talking about the winner of last week's poll. Hopefully you guys participated in that. I gotta go pull it up to see who won real fast. Still have to go vote. And then we have to talk about, Ryan, what are we talking about tonight?
We're talking about this weekend, man. We got 2 events going on and some crazy nonsense. Mostly Shaharazad nonsense, but this is the last time we ever have to talk about her, so I think it's fine that we give her like send off, you know?
Yeah. This is the memorial for Shaharazad before she gets the ultimate banhammer of all time. So we're going to talk about Denver and Nats, the end of the current New Frontiers era, in a sense. We are also going to be talking about a topic that we recorded a couple weeks ago, but Brandon's audio didn't quite work, which is talking about what does it mean to be in a certain tier? What does it take to put a deck in a certain tier? What do the different tiers mean? And we'll also kind of like talk about some of the decks that we kind of think fall into those ranges, as well as if you guys in the chat will put some decks that you kind of would like ask us to see what tiers we would think they would be in and why. That's just an awesome interaction. And then we'll wrap it up with the question of the week, which comes to us from Jeff. Speaking of Jeff, he might be joining us a little later, so hopefully we can get him to come join us for a little bit of a chat. And then we're just going to have some open time to hang out and answer your questions. So that's the beauty of live streaming, is we can do that. So we'll get started. So while I pull up the poll, let's see.
What was the poll from last week? I already don't remember. I have terrible memory. So
Which Force of Will character would you take to karaoke, and what would they sing?
No, that was 2 weeks ago.
That was 2 weeks ago when Brandon's audio messed up. It was what would you be as a promo, and what would it look like?
Oh yeah, okay.
I forgot that we never got the answer, and I really liked my answer for that karaoke one.
I think we all like the
My
answer for
answer
karaoke.
we do 2 silly questions, so we can do that one, rehash that one.
So we could redo the karaoke one? Sure, we can bring back
Yeah, that was like one of our best questions, and it just got completely thrown into the void.
That was one of our best episodes. Like, you gotta trust us, listener. It really was.
It was an hour and 20 minutes long, and then we got to the end, and Brandon was like, oh, my OBS stopped after 4 minutes. Great.
For shame. That's the secret Patreon content, actually. We actually do have it, but you have to get the subscription mega level down.
Let's see.
$100 subscriber on Jeremy's Patreon.
So, let's see. If you could be made into a card, what would you pick and why? I was Grim the Rightful King. Frank was Jupiter, Warlock of the Woodstar. Ryan was Time-Bound Spirit. And Brandon was Farer's Spell. And the results are that I tied with Frank.
Whoa!
Yes!
Whoa.
Yes!
Split the crown.
Frank with the wooden chair! Warlock of the wood chair.
Frank, the Warlock of the Wood Chair, and Grim, the Rightful King. Ryan and Brandon, you got 0 votes.
Oh, I would have voted for Brandon. I completely missed the poll being put up, so give Brandon 1. I deserve to lose.
Okay,
this.
Brandon
I'll
has
vote
1
for
vote.
Ryan, so now we're both tied.
All right.
There you go. You each have 1. So, with that out of the way, let's talk our respective events. So, us 3 were at Denver, and Ryan, you were at Nats. So, Ryan, why don't you talk about Nats a little bit?
Man, I feel like this event really kind of changed my opinion on Shaharazad, because I played it and it just felt like its weaknesses were being laid bare by a lot of the creative choices from a lot of other players. There were 2 different Lumia decks that were just doing a number on all Shaharazad decks. I really feel like Time Spinning Witch decks had a significantly even, if not favored, matchup against Shaharazad, and also against like some of the Lumia decks. like anything with Null Page in it just had the potential to just beat Shaharazad. Like that card just kind of went completely under the radar, and like my team didn't even find out about it. Or like I say my team, I meant like the OTG remnants kind of saw it on the Japanese lists. Like they were all playing 4 of it, and we're just like, we'll give this a try. And 4 of that sounds like it's possible. But yeah, Shaharazad felt like, you know, it is like the tier 0 deck, and I feel like if you gave the format more time, like the deck would adapt to all of these like crazy things that came up. But this was really the event to like just kind of spike it and just, you know, go for it. But unfortunately, I think there was just like too much Shaharazad being represented, so all these rogue decks kind of just like got picked off by each other, and then like just you know fell on the bad side of 50-50. And then, you know, the finals was Shaharazad for Shaharazad. Top 4, there was only a red-green Fair besides the other 3 Shaharazad decks, and red-green Fair is like the worst deck to beat Shaharazad, but red-green Fair is the deck that's going to punish the rogue decks. But yeah, so I played Sherry, and it went okay. I got 12th seed, which was enough to top, almost like it's a European event. I did not feel like I earned it, but hey, I guess that's how Europeans feel, right? Anyway, so... Yeah, I ended up scooping in top 16 because my friend Brandon didn't have an invite, and he did end up making top 4 and getting that, so we'll see him in Japan. But yeah, really it just felt like Shaharazad felt a lot more tier 1 than tier 0, and I know like based on the results, it's kind of like difficult to back up, but like the exploitations were there. If we had more time, I think we'd see more stuff like pop up to beat it. At the same time, we'd see Shaharazad like be a little bit more anti-meta instead of anti-Sherry. But yeah, that was kind of like just my impressions from the event.
Okay, cool. And the deck that ended up winning was...
It was Michael Aguilar's just normal green-black Sherry. Yeah, it was green-black versus blue in the finals, and Rico ended up taking second. And then I think Taylor Norris was in third with green-black Sherry, and then red-green Fair in fourth.
Excuse me, his name during the tournament was Tyler
Norris. Sorry, Tyler Norris got third. But yeah, so like there were 7 Sherry decks in top 16, and then 3 of them made the top 4, and there was like 22 Sherry decks in the 60-person tournament. So like it just kind of like really did
Shaharazad's
consistency. There was 60 to 70, something like that.
60 to 70? Sweet. Yeah. Well, hopefully all of you people who are watching joined us for Denver, GP Denver. We had 56 players, and of that 56, 17 were Sherry, and then 7 of those converted into top 8. 3 of those converted into top 4, and then we had the finals, which was Zach Tufford versus Jalen Rojas. That was... And I think, speaking to Null Page, right, in that match was the first time the finals was the first time we got to see Null Page get played because none of the other Sherry lists were running it. And I was kind of blown away with just like how impactful that card was, even in the mirror. Like it was a lot. Like Jalen ended up having to like use his own cards to kill his own stuff just to make it so that Null Page didn't steal a Puppet Maker. And I was like, woof. It's a lot.
Yeah, it was a nice trick. I don't really know if it would stick around as being very good. I mean, the Sherrys can just go into Cleaning Doll, and we could also have just decided to put Destruction of the Portal in the sideboard. And it's like, it's a lot of things that, yeah, like it snuck in there as the last event of this season. I'm still not necessarily convinced it's that good, but like it certainly seemed pretty okay at this event.
And for those of you who are missing it, Frank, while you're talking, can you go ahead and pull up Null Page's image?
Yeah. So I would have to back up Brandon on this one, just because I also play Magic pretty regularly, and I've seen a similar card that's in Magic Standard that is bounced between like format defining and then just nowhere, because as soon as it starts to get too good, there's just answers to it everywhere. And like in this case, like one of the key things is just everyone stopped main decking or stopped playing Lorites. Like as soon as you can just Lorite that trigger, they've spent 3 to get 1 like, you know, 1 for 1.
Yeah, it's definitely abusable. I remember like leading up to the event, I was talking a lot of shit about how I just thought we had the best Shaharazad deck and how we were going to win both of the events. And that was because like I knew that we were going to play Null Page, and I don't think anyone was expecting it. Like you don't play Lorite in the Sherry Mirror, you don't play Addition Removal in the Sherry Mirror. Like it just kind of sneaks in there. If you're not expecting it, it's going to just blow you out of the water. But if you are, it's going to end up being like mediocre to almost bad. And you do have stuff like your own Cleaning Doll and your own Intervention of Reality, which is another tech that kind of goes along with the Null Page. So when it does get Lorited, it's sitting there, you get to abuse Intervention of Reality, which is another just kind of like, that's actually a very, very strong card if you can turn it online Legend 5, where it's, you know, it's doing a rapid growth effect. It's just like the addition part is like just it sucks that it has to be there, but like you have your own null pages now to kill in like the Lumia matchups, Ataracti matchups, you can kill those, so it's even useful there. But like the main thing is at Legend 5, you can search for your own Resonator, and like at Legend 5 is when you want to flip your Shaharazad. So if you like get a rapid growth effect and then also search your deck for a Puppet Maker and then play Puppet Maker and then flip your Shaharazad because you're in Legend 5 and then draw 2 cards, like that's a very, very powerful effect. So it kind of mitigates the weakness of Null Page just by like having an addition to be able to kill for yourself and then like doing some other cool stuff.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't aware, Frank, the image is a little small, so if we can blow it up at all, that'd be cool. If we can't, that's fine. So this is an addition. It's a 3-drop, 3-green addition that says, when this card enters the field, target one card on your opponent's side of the field and remove it from the game. As long as this card is on the field, your opponent cannot play cards that share a name with the card that this card removed. So essentially what this means is if you can drop it on curve and successfully hit a Puppet Maker, then you're essentially doing what we used to do a long time ago with stories told in 1001 Nights, way back in the Grim era, which was if you were Shaharazad and you killed this card, you got to search your opponent's deck, hand, and graveyard for all copies of it and immediately get rid of it. So in a deck that doesn't have any addition hate, right, this card essentially became play 3 drop, steal 4 cards from your opponent, but even worse because it's like also give your opponent 3 dead draws, because then they can't even cast them and they just sit in their hand. So in the mirror, if you can hit a Puppet Maker, or even just in general against Sherry, if you could hit a Puppet Maker and they didn't have any form of addition hate, then you just stole all 4 of their Puppet Makers, which is a major part of the Sherry value engine, and they just don't have a way to get it back. So then you can kind of like keep up with them and drain them out a little bit easier.
Brandon, are you going to say something? You're like starting to talk earlier.
I was going to say intervention of reality or inversion or whatever is actually my favorite part of Null Page. Like that was what I thought was the best reason to be playing Null Page. Outside of that, even if Null Page isn't being canceled, like a 3-mana sorcery speed hit something just isn't good enough, and locking them out of the draws is kind of nice, but like if you're wasting your time doing that and they're like just resolving quick cast 11/11s on the same curve, then you're just going to be put below final battle life, and then you're still just going to lose to that. But the intervention of reality, now that is a very powerful card, and I think that was the key that was missing that really made me think Null Page was actually worth running.
Yep.
And again, like this was like something that Japan did. Like I think I was watching the TCG Scrubs podcast earlier, and like Jeff was actually talking about like why Shaharazad didn't get e-banned, and basically it's because the company's Japanese, so they tend to listen to the Japanese players more than international players. And I think it was like only 53% of Japanese players actually wanted Shaharazad banned. Or I'm sure if you poll like America, it's probably closer to like 80 or 90%. And it's interesting because like the fact that this list came out of Japan with the Null Pages and the intervention realities, like they have the most anti-Sherry list, because I feel like the Null Pages are like specifically good at killing Puppet Maker and like also having backup. So like they're ready to beat Sherry, but they're doing it with Sherry, and they're not playing Null Page in any other decks. I was just like really confused as to why they like have the best Sherry deck like secretly. Nobody else is picking up on it, but they also don't care about Sherry. It didn't even win their event. Like I'm just like, there's so much weird stuff going on that I was like, it just kind of blew my mind to hear that only half of them want it banned, and that's why it didn't get banned.
Yeah, that is a little nuts to think about. Well, this was her last weekend.
So. Yeah, hopefully. so I hear.
Forever in our hearts, forever in the grave.
What? No, she has no place in my heart. She's usurped the throne of all of the green, white, black deck rulers that I've wanted to play this season. So she is nowhere in my heart.
Fair. That is fair.
There's a part of me that wonders if like Shaharazad is actually just like the most broken thing, or if green and black are just the best colors, and then Shaharazad was also the best green-black ruler. Like it's a little difficult for me to say. Like I wonder if she was other colors, if she would even be like that good.
No, I think that's definitely a big part of it. I was playing around with green black fair sort of before the event, like just to kind of see what it could do. And what's funny is I thought it was ridiculously powerful, but then the more and more I played it, the more and more I thought, like, why am I not just playing Shaharazad? This deck is powerful, but then Shaharazad just kind of is the next step above what that deck could be doing.
That sounds like a familiar conversation that we've had with a ruler that ended up getting banned.
Yeah. Green Black has just been killing it for like a year and a half now. This is gross.
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
Red green close behind.
It's never really gone away. Yeah.
That's the one thing I do like about this, like, no dual storm format we're about to get into, is we won't have green-black just be the most dominant thing in Force of Will.
Yeah, you know,
There you go.
we keep complaining about like Force of Wind, but really Darkness has been almost like one of the things that's really carried Green this far. Like, where would Green be right now without Final Battle? Like, I often wonder that. I think it wouldn't be in the same
That's
spot.
a good conversation. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Without Final Battle, would Green have...
if you still had True Blade, if you want to give Green True Blade, then, like, yeah, you do have some stuff. But, like, Green really needs that supplementary, like, interactive color, I think. Because, like, Green's good at stopping your opponent from getting on board with all the counter spells and stuff. But, like, once they are on board, you need, like, some kind of comeback tool. And Final Battle just has been the go-to answer for Green to be able to do that for a year now. So it's like, when you finally do get through all the counter spells and you get to resolve, like, a board and, like, start setting your stuff, you just get Final Battle. And because it took you so long to get through the counter spells, like, you just couldn't even put any damage in. So it's just the hard punish. Yeah. But that's gone. We're done. We're in new Valhalla. A new dawn rises.
New Valhalla, a new dawn.
New Dawn.
Man, there's some pretty cool. There's some pretty cool stuff coming. I'm pretty excited about it. Brandon, not so much.
A little terrified.
I'm
Excited.
still excited. Don't do that. Don't throw me under the bus.
So, we were talking about this earlier, Brandon. So I guess we can have this conversation now, in terms of the end of Sherry and moving into New Dawn and moving into this idea.
The end of Sherry and the beginning of 10 Sherry. There we go.
So let me. So I was having this conversation with Rob a little bit, and it gives me a little bit more hope, I guess, or a little bit more positivity about that it's not actually becoming 10 Sherries. But he was saying that Force of Will, he thinks that Sherry and the Grimoire was the introduction to, was supposed to be the introduction to this whole idea of the extra deck and like having this like utility stuff, right? To that style of gameplay, shifting the game in that direction. However, his thought was, as is unfortunately been kind of a history in several elements over the course of Force of Will's history, they introduce it at like the strongest level. Like, rather than be like, here's a hint of it, they go, no, full power, right off at the bat. And then they go, whoa.
Explain the point. I'm not trying to get
right.
They don't really.
No.
Do
I don't think he's saying that he did it. They did it intentionally.
Oh.
I think that they just have a pattern. They have a pattern of doing that, and it's not that doesn't really cross their minds of like, or that it doesn't really come into consideration or realization that like, oh yeah, we just introduced it at the highest possible level, highest possible strength level as an introduction to the mechanic. Like, what was the first regalia that we ever got spoiled? Lave.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Ta-da! It's the strongest regalia. Like. You know what I mean? Like, it's this kind of... They've done it several times. Like, they introduced Resonance. What was the first ruler that got really good... that, like, they spoiled with Resonance? Prisia. Ta-da! Like...
No.
Cool.
The Dragons came out with Resonance before Prisia.
Oh, yeah.
That's fair. I guess that's
Green
fair.
Dragon.
I got it.
That is not limited
I've been
to Force of
bested.
Will, and it's not... Like, even if they're not intending to, like, specifically go at it like, oh, let's hit this hard in the paint straight from the get-go, it sort of has a tendency to happen with new mechanics. Like, just like, this was the reason Magic had a very broken format for Standard, like, in the last couple of years, was that when you introduce something new like that, you're sort of incentivized, like, as a company, you're incentivized to push it a little so that players have a reason to try it. Because otherwise they're like, oh, there's this new mechanic and it's this weird extra deck, and I could instead just play this cool aggro deck and not have to deal with any of that nonsense. And so you push it a little to make it to where players are like incentivized and like enticed into playing it. And it's very easy to push it too hard once you do that, especially when it's a new mechanic. Thus, you have limited testing balancing it.
But at the same time, like, they gave us the sealed rulers. Like, they just gave us, here's this tease, here are these, like, rulers where literally none of them are playable right now, but they will be eventually. And we're just like, what are we supposed to do with these? Like, you gave us Fair at the same time, and Fair is just a full power, like, format stomper, is even one of the best rulers in Wanderer, which makes him one of the best rulers you ever printed, and you gave us half-assed versions of, like, the other 5 structure deck rulers in the set. Like, they have the two ends of the spectrum with nothing in between.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, is that, like, with the introduction of the Grimoire and Sherry, when it was supposed to be most likely, was an introduction to this new way to play the game, of having this utility of this extra deck and like tweaking that around to kind of put what you're trying to do with your deck, or try to make sure that your tools are there. Like, because I think we can all say that once this set comes out, once Valhalla comes out, the game is fundamentally changing. Like,
more or less.
The game of Force of Will is how we play Force of Will is fundamentally changing, because we have an entire new set of stuff to start getting considering when we're doing our deck building, and it's not like, that's a lot to deal with. And not only that, but all of our rulers are now vanillas on the front side, right?
Kind of.
Do you remember? Okay, so let me flash back way long time ago, right? So when Fox was first released, before we got Griffin released, right? We all saw Fox and went, why would we ever play a ruler with a vanilla front? Right? I distinctly remember so many of us talking about that. Like, why would we ever play a ruler that doesn't have an effect on the front?
Fox's defense, he judges for 0, so it's kind of like.
Well, I understand. Yeah. I'm not saying that it's like. I'm not saying that it's like a perfect comparison.
Like, requires an extra step. That's not like the same thing. Like, it's.
Well, at the time, like, what we had, like, Feasting was like our ruler, like Mikage was our ruler. Like, our rulers at the time were like very frontside impactful, and you only ever
frontside abilities. Tons of frontside abilities. Why would we ever pick a card with nothing on the front? So now what we're having is an entire cluster's worth of rulers are becoming vanillas on the front, which means that our entire thought process for what am I going to do game plan wise before I flip is now focused on your rune deck build, which is, I think, very different than we've ever really done before. Because don't get me wrong, Sherry had the same kind of mechanic in that sense of like, oh, which cards am I going to pull? But really, it was like, what is my fifth story going to be? Right? But you were also building to her front side, which was dolls. So now, our deck building in terms of thinking about what is our game plan, what is our gameplay, what is our rune deck going to look like before we flip, imagining that every ruler is going to have access to 10 to maybe 13 different runes over the span of the course of the cluster, like, with their front sides being vanilla, like, that is a major fundamental shift in how we deck build and how we play this game. And so I think I'm very excited about that, and I think it's completely different than Sherry in that regard. Like, so, like, don't get me wrong, in the sense of starting hand 10 cards, yes, that is, okay, cool, we're getting 10 Sherrys. But, like, I don't think what the rune deck is supposed to be for these rulers equates them to what the extra deck was for Sherry. And so I think that's where I stand in terms of the distinction between the two.
I know when we first started talking about runes, like Bremont especially had this fear, and I did to some degree, where we were like terrified that he was going to be very generic answers and just like generically powerful cards. And it's now that we're kind of seeing them go in that direction, my biggest hope is that we get a lot of viable options. Like, I don't just want like there to be 5 very obviously broken runes. I want there to be like 25 broken runes, and then I want you to have to make seriously impactful decisions about which 5 are going to go in your rune deck. And then it kind of like, you know, like what kind of gameplay like that would entice. Like suddenly, like you sit down and like like all 25 like good cards that could be in your opponent's rune deck. You have to like sit there and figure out which ones are going to be there. And with like especially the green cards, like the 2-mana 6/6 that when it enters the battlefield lets you pay any mana for a chant. Like we've seen incredibly powerful 1-mana white and 1-mana red runes. So like the fact that you can just have 2 green mana and then just have access to any of these runes in your deck just seems insane.
So that's a key point to think about, Ryan, is that we've already in the cards that we've seen spoiled, there are runes and there are rune/chants.
Yes, yeah.
So like you have to remember that too. Now a rune/chant can be in your rune deck or in your main deck, and a pure rune can only exist in the rune deck. So like that also I think is something that you have to keep in mind as you're looking at these cards, is like, is this a card that I get to play 4 of, or is this a card that I only get to play 1 of, right?
Okay.
And if I do play that 1, is it worth me taking up a slot in my rune deck, or like that, those kinds of things?
Okay, the distinction between a 3 of and a 1 of doesn't matter if it always starts in your opening hand. Like, yeah, you could only get it once, but unlike a card that you have 4 of that you have to draw, and you're playing 4 of it so that you can hit it once, you're always going to hit these runes that you only play a 1 of. And on that topic, though, back to what Ryan was saying, is anyone else like a little bit frustrated that this is the world that we're living in, where we're like, we can't just hope that they're all going to be balanced, because clearly they're not. Instead, we have to hope that they're like enough of them are.
I think they're going to be balanced.
I mean, like, the fact that they start your opening hand is what makes them, like, not balanced. Like, the fact that I just always have this threat of I can pay 1 red and then deal 7 to an attacker or blocker, like, that card should not start in your opening hand. I'm sorry.
That one, and then, like, so like the Moonbeam Butterfly for just red. Like, I mean, I don't understand, like, where they're going with this. Like, you're saying that they're vanilla on their front side. They're not. Like, imagine a ruler that just has God's Art Red X that effect on the front side. Like, what would you be saying about that? And then tack on
that could be canceled?
A, not even have that. B, have 4 other God's Arts that they get to choose from. And it's just like, so many of these effects are just like, you're putting so much frontal power on these rulers that it's just ridiculous. Like, in addition to having the backside.
I mean,
so we were talking about.
I don't feel like these rulers are better than, like, Gil or Time Spinning Witch or Shaharazad. You know what I mean?
Okay. So if that is true for now, which it might be, how are they going to develop this? Because there's no rulers for the rest of the set, right? They're just going to continue to print runes. Like, at what power level are they going to put these, and how are they going to continue to print runes without A, making them more powerful, and B, not making them more powerful so the sets don't sell? Like they're boxing themselves into eventually being a mistake here, even if it isn't one right now. And I'm just very nervous for where this is going, like, either from this set or for R4. Like, we have to look to this future.
I think the ultimate endgame here is that the old rulers like Gil and TSW get phased out just by, like, the 5 most powerful options for each ruler being better than whatever Gil or Time Spinning Witch is doing. And, like, in a sense,
I don't like that solution. That solution terrifies me.
Like, what's the other solution where, like, you just print rulers?
That's why the mechanic sucks. This is why this whole thing is a mistake. Is that there really is no good way to make this. Like they could have taken runes that aren't exactly what we said that they shouldn't do. And again, I'm not trying to be a naysayer. Like, believe me, I'm not trying to.
I guess I just don't see the power level of these cards as high as you guys do.
Do you not?
But then again, I haven't been. I guess I haven't been.
Jeremy.
No, don't get.
It's not like it's 5 cards. Like, you're starting the game with, like, 5, like you said, God's Arts, basically. Like, you get 5 distinct abilities you get to do, and depending on, like, the divinity cost, you might not even get to access all 5 of them in the course of.
So looking at the structure deck. So what we've seen so far is we've seen the structure deck runes. We've seen a couple of the, like, main deck of, like, the new Dawn of New Valhalla, New Dawn Rises set, but mostly, like, the ones each night have been / the following morning have been, like, the structure deck runes. And so far the math is adding up that if you take each ruler's, like, 5 starter deck runes, you can only ever cast 4 of them. The divinity cost will always go above 10 if you try to cast the 5th. So I'm not saying that, like, breaks anything. I'm not saying that fixes anything. I'm just saying that's an important, like, just. That's a pattern that I'm noticing, that we've noticed.
It's just like,
is that, like, in the starter decks, you only get 4. So
can I quickly, like, propose a thought experiment that kind of, like, explains why cards are very good. So imagine for a second with me a ruler that exists that starts the game with X, like, lore counters on it and has 0, remove a lore counter, draw a card. So the only thing this ruler does is it draws you a card X number of times whenever you want in a game. How high does X have to be for this ruler to be competitive right now? Have to draw you. Just give me an answer. Just tell me. What do you think? I'm not going to chastise you for whatever.
I'm really trying to think, because, like, I feel like when you compare it to the other rulers that are going to be powerful in cluster, you're looking at Gil and you're looking at Time Spinning, which, like, are these decks powerful because of the cards in the deck, or is it because of the ruler's abilities? And I feel like it's because of the ruler's abilities.
But in some sense, the ruler's abilities can equal an amount of cards from your deck. Like that is a resource that you are drawing towards. So, like, how many cards would you have to trade in for that amount of power level? And, like, and yes, I understand that some of the cards, like Time Spinning, which is like Dragon Lord's Breath, are based on the ruler. I think that this ruler has equal power level cards that everyone else gets just based on their abilities. Like, how many other cards do you have to draw? I would postulate that it's in the vicinity of 3 to 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say 3.
3 to and 5 on the rough end of like Shaharazad power level. Well, that's how many cards you get. This mechanic is you get to start with 5 extra cards that you can just get whenever you want. And what I was hoping was that these runes were not full cards, so there wasn't exactly this. But 1 red 700 to an attacker, Moonbeam Butterfly.
Isn't it 2?
No,
it's 2.
It's 1.
Is 1 red and 1?
Okay. Except they can also stop blockers and attackers for whatever reason.
That's the master rune, though, right? So it is, like, tied to the ruler.
Also, quick cast. What?
Okay, so yeah, quick cast, that just seems like an absolute mistake to me personally, but it is at least tied. That's the master rune, right? It gets tied to the ruler.
Sure, it's the master rune. That's fine. But, like, and then also 1 red for tutor a dragon or else do damage equal to its attack. Like, that's a 1-for-1.
Wait, hold on. Let's see. So it's 1, reveal a top card, deal damage. If it's a resonator, deal damage. And then add it to your hand if it's a dragon. 1 red, search for a dragon, or dragon you control deals damage.
That's not the Master Rune though. The Master Rune one's the one that's
the Master Rune is the Moonbeam Butterfly.
Yes. And that one's the scariest one so far.
What I'm saying is, like, with this thought experiment, we have determined that a ruler that is just +4 or ish cards on the front side is already competitive right now, and that's what all of these are with these runes. Like, these are just rulers that say +4, and then also just do other things on the backside, which have mostly been pretty mediocre so far. But like, the runes have all been very good. And how much better do they have to get? Like, at what point are these going to be +1 cards? Like, obviously the Master Runes seem to be better than a single card. Like, there's no card that's as good as a Master Rune. So that's like +1.2, 1.4. Like, how good are these cards? And so again, this is the kind of thing that
just makes me to give a point of comparison. So like, Ryan, you brought up Time Spinning Witch a couple times.
Yeah.
Time Spinning Witch is functionally just like, so if you want to compare it to runes, pretend that there's one of these runes that just once you flipped it over for 0 and said you have a Sacred Elf, but they can't touch it. That's functionally what Time Spinning Witch is, and like that's
but that's like you don't get 4 other runes. Like, that's just what she's doing.
Yeah,
I'm comparing the fact that I can get colorless mana every turn and saying that is as good as, if not better, than starting the game with 5 very specific cards in your open hand. Because all of the cards that we've seen so far, all of the runes are like fairly generic and just like fairly basic. Like, this is my Dragon Tribal deck. This is my Kill Your Resonators deck. This is my Protect My Guys deck. This is my Buff My Guys deck. Like, some of them like draw cards or something. Like the green one especially seems a little bit strong. But I think it's like Divinity 3, right? Like, that's one of the higher costing runes.
Divinity 3 pays 0 if it's in your rune deck. Reveal the top 5. Pick a Wind Resonator, put it in your hand, Divinity 3.
Yeah, like, I'm just trying to think about, like, in all of the cluster stuff, like, what are the 40 cards that are going in your deck? And if your ruler says draw an extra 3 cards, I'm like, okay, that's really good. But when you're not taking these cards in your deck and making anywhere nearly as powerful synergies as Gil, as Time Spinning Witch, as Shaharazad, then like the fact that you have extra cards isn't going to do jack shit, because you're just going to be playing like 8/8s for 3 mana, and it's like, okay, it's a good thing it's a free 8/8 for 3 mana that you drew, but like it's still just an 8/8 for 3 mana, and I'm going to do Mosasaurus things in Time Spinning Witch. I'm going to Distortion of Time. I'm going to search my deck for any chant that I want, kind of stuff.
We haven't seen the support yet, and we've only seen 2 of these Master Runes, and as I was saying, like, there are going to be more runes. How much more broken do we get until you reach that level that you're talking about?
Even we've seen super rares, right? Like, we've seen like the blue super rare is Lancelot.
Super rares from this set get better, right? I mean, or else the sets are going to suck and not sell. Like, so there's no solution. This is like reiterating what I said earlier.
I mean, I think that it can be like equal. I think that, like, I'm not expecting these to come out the gate and be better than the other rulers, because you've got 4 sets of support for Gil and, well, you know, 1 set of support for Time Spinning Witch. But like, these are the rulers that are going to have to stand the test of time and see 3 more sets without power creeping into oblivion. So I think it's going to be understandable. These are going to be weaker than, I'm hoping that these are going to be weaker than the rulers we currently have. And then set 2, they're going to be like, maybe these can start competing. And then set 3, they turn the corner, and these are like the only rulers that you see play in tournaments anymore, and like maybe some other stuff from the old sets. And then set 4 is where we're just completely new Valhalla. I mean, like, think about the decks right now. Like, what cards from Lapis Cluster are we still playing? It's like Severing Winds, Final Battle, and like, we've completely phased out of it just because, like, we are power creeping. But like, if you took an Alice Cluster deck and put it up against a Shaharazad cluster deck, whatever, rare cluster, like, they would be pretty Shaharazad. You can tell how my brain works. But, like,
I mean, pretty much.
We're not really like power creeping, but like we're shifting power into different places, and then like the counters that exist are in the set, and like we're no longer countering things that aren't in the set. I guess,
and
like,
that's why I'm saying, like,
it.
and that's kind of why I said, like, it feels like with these new rulers and with the rune deck and kind of what the runes are turning into. That's why I'm saying it. Like, it feels like Force of Will, the game, and how we play it is fundamentally changing, like, at its core.
I was
like,
playing Yu-Gi-Oh when we first got synchros. Like, that's like a little bit what this feels like, where like you used to just play with your 40 card deck, and now suddenly you just have a whole nother decision making process when it comes to your extra deck and what cards are going to go in there, and there's like meaningful decisions that you have to make to put in that extra deck based on the cards that you put into your deck. It really made things interesting. The downside, of course, is that people net deck and like the very popular and broken strategies get like broken quickly. But because there are just like infinitesimal options and just so many different ways you can actually like use this mechanic, it's possible that there's still ways to float around it. My biggest fear is that like because green seems to have this mana fixing going on, that in a single color like stone format, like green's just going to be the best because it's going to play all the most broken runes from all the other colors.
What does green have for mana fixing?
So we've seen the 2 mana 6/6 that produces the thing like that. Just seems to be like if their mechanic is like toolbox and just ninjas and just using the resources.
So what I'm hearing you saying is that if wind continues to be able to be dual color, then we're screwed.
Like that's my fear. That's what I'm afraid of. Is just like one color gets to very easily splash other colors, and right now it looks like green would be able to do that. But otherwise, I feel like if you want to play 2-color decks, it doesn't seem viable unless you're specifically black-red, because it's where you have the stone in it. But like,
or time spending witch.
I definitely understand where you're nervous, Brandon. I just don't think we have enough evidence yet to be properly terrified. Is I guess what I'm thinking.
I think that's a fair statement. But I also, I can totally see where you're coming from.
We don't have enough evidence
Go ahead.
to call anything broken yet for sure. And that's not what I'm saying at all. Like, believe me, that it goes a lot deeper than that. It's about disliking the direction more than disliking how broken it seems. Because obviously we can't say what's going to be good, but I think that this was a very dangerous direction to go. And I'm just like, I always want to see Force of Will become the best game in the entire world. I love this game. I love the community. I think the game is great. And I hate that they keep burning themselves on these same exact things, which is just obscene amounts of card advantage in new territories, in directions that they haven't gone, reusing things that they've already broken and not learning from it. And it's, I don't know. I got my happiness here, so I can stop ranting, but
I was hoping there was going to be an analogy with this cookie, and it just turned into you just needed a cookie, and I understand. I was waiting for think about this cookie. This is what Force of Will is, and this is what I'm waiting. I'm excited for it, and never mind.
This cookie,
you bite into it.
Force of Will, and I love it, but it's going to be gone eventually.
Oh, that's so sad. Frank, do you have any thoughts? You've been kind of quiet as we've all ranted and yelled.
We're going to go with the cookie metaphor. They're switching over to just like focusing on oatmeal cookies. And the problem is the longer they make oatmeal cookies, the harder it is to go back and like mess with the recipe for the regular cookies because they've been focused on perfecting the oatmeal batter.
The sugar cookies.
But the one thing that does worry me is like if we're looking at this as a new direction, like right now we're like, oh, these are fairly balanced, but like sort of the point is that if they keep printing runes, eventually you will have more and more choices. We're in one set, and we're looking to have, if this rate keeps up, we're going to have about a third of what would be a normal set for this game in runes. And that is that's a start. That's our starting batch. Of course, it's going to be a little larger, but then all they have to do is add 20 runes each set. 18. So
I don't think we're going to have that many runes per set.
You don't think we'll have 3 for each color in a set? That's 15.
I mean, I can see 2, maybe 2 to 3 per color per set.
10 to 15 in a.
Yeah,
Around 100 runes to pick from, and if it continues to be a mechanic, that means that every cluster we're getting about 10% of the cluster is runes. That eventually becomes a massive pool to pick from, dwarfing anything else that's been in the game.
Continue beyond the cluster?
What?
You think they're going to continue beyond this cluster?
That's sort of what's been implied. Jeremy has been talking pretty nonstop about how this is a whole new direction for the game. It could be that this is just cluster specific. They're going to be runes are for Valhalla only, and then we go to a whole different thing after Valhalla. But if it's not, it really will guaranteed wipe out the rest of the older style rulers, or new ones they print that are non-divinity rulers will have to be massively powerful to compete.
You're just shifting. I think you're just shifting the power from the ruler into this rune deck, and it's just it's the same power level that we've been seeing in Force of Will. It's just being put in a different place, and it's allowing more creativity with your deck building, and the fact that I know I get to pick how powerful my rule is going to be based on which of these 5 options I want to put in my rune deck, instead of just saying I'm picking one ruler that's going to have this powerful option, because you can look at the black-white-green control deck, right? And your options for this black-white-green control deck are, do I want to be Zero? Do I want to be Rhea? Do I want to be Shaharazad? Do I want to be Imul? And the answer is always Shaharazad. But now I get to say, okay, there's one rune that's clearly the best. That's going to be in my rune deck. But now I have 4 other options to choose from. So like, it's clear. I think what's going to happen is it's going to be clear what's best. But like, you still get to pick a little bit more about like your flavor around like your own play style and stuff, instead of just saying, okay, like my entire deck is now defined by the fact that Shaharazad's the best ruler, and I have to play it, and then I have to play synergies, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like,
So
at worst,
yeah.
At worst, we're going to have most broken master rune, so you have to play that ruler. But like, you still get 4 of the runes, and then like every individual player gets to say, okay, what 4 runes complement this deck, and what 40 cards go in my deck, because the
Kind of like everyone gets to say what 5 stories are in my Shaharazad deck. No, I don't.
That's not the same.
It's like,
it's not the same at all. It's 4 stories that everyone
there's only
picks,
like 6
and what's your
stories
tech?
total that are playable.
No.
There's going to be like 10 runes from each color.
So no, but if we
We don't
end up in the
get
scenario you just described, Brian, where we have 1 master rune that's that dominant, we will end back up with
worst
a
case.
master rune and 3 knowns that will be played 100%.
Let's say that like the best rune is like just clearly a red rune, and it's not a master rune. Like, do you have to play a red ruler, or do you say, okay, the best ruler is actually the ruler that says flip discard 3, but I really want to play this red rune. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, this is a hypothetical scenario. Like, I'm not saying there's going to be a master rune, but like, that if that's our worst case, is that really worse than what we have right now?
I don't think.
So here's my thought experiment, and it's going kind of off of what Ryan was saying about like we're just moving the power. So before I do my thought experiment, let's preface this with moving into the next step of the conversation, which is talking about tiering, right? So if we can kind of quickly go over what we talked about in the podcast that didn't get posted 2 weeks ago, what makes a tier? And then we'll come back to my thought experiment and kind of you'll see how it all connects with
So
that topic of like moving the power.
Your eye that like collects moisture, and then like when you feel it.
Yeah, TIER, not TEAR. Solid man from the This Is Lost picture in his background. Super solid. So what separates a tier? What separates tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then what makes the deck tier 0 from there? So let's kind of have that conversation real quick, and then I'll go back to my thought experiment.
So I define these sort of in like I did before. Define these in a set of questions. Any tier 1 deck is a deck where basically if someone was preparing for an event, would my questions to them be, have you considered playing it, and have you prepared against it? And if the answer is and if that's a deck I would ask both of those questions all the time, it's what I would call a tier 1. It's a deck that is strong enough that it can be competitively viable and is like does something powerful.
Sure.
Tier 2 would be any deck where I would say, maybe have you prepared, or have you at least looked at it and are you familiar with it? It's generally a deck that is missing some key pieces to be competitively viable, has a very like prevalent answer that can shut it down, and thus gets put down if it tries to show up too much or something like that. Tier 3 is any deck that does something like unique or interesting or powerful, but is just not like consistent enough or like not powerful enough. So it does something interesting, but it's missing a piece or two to be actually like powerful. So like picture Imul after Imul when she's first released. She does some interesting stuff with the shift. She does this really cool card advantage engine, but she's just a little bit too slow. And what she's doing is like not powerful enough in a couple of the early turns.
Okay. And tier 3?
That was tier 3.
Okay, sweet.
And then tier 0 is basically just a tier 1 deck where it, even after it's focused and hated on too much, continues to dominate and becomes more central because it is too powerful at the answer. Like the only way to answer it is to be the same deck.
Right. So, to that framework, Brandon, Ryan, would you guys add anything to those definitions of those different tiers?
Mostly covered. I mean, 0 is deck that is unbeatably. If you had to play in an event, there's almost no other thing to consider. Tier 1 has a reasonable chance of topping. Tier 2 is probably won't top, but it could. And tier 3 is extremely unlikely to top. And I kind of measure it by how likely I think it is to top an event.
Sure.
Which mostly going to align with what Frank said.
Yep.
Yeah, pretty much.
Sure.
Thing. Tier 0 just can't get hated out. Like, you know it's the best deck, and like you're trying to beat it, and like there's just like the deck just does something so efficient or like so much better than anything else. That, like it's just like almost a design flaw where like it's just doing things that other cards do not have the power to do. Tier 1 is just like the deck that's on the radar. Like, you know people are going to play it. There's reasons you should play it, and it's got like 50% matchup spreads, like or like at worst like 40% matchup spreads against anything else you expect to see. Tier 2 is like where you just get into like IU/Val 2 tier, in my opinion. Like those like just bomb diggity centric J ruler decks that if you know they're coming, you will probably beat them. But if you don't, like, they're just gonna blast you. They just like do a lot of stuff. Basically, like, I wouldn't be surprised to see them top an event. But like at the same time, if you played it, I wouldn't expect you to top it. It's just that if 10 people play it, I would expect one of them to top it. And then like tier 3 is usually doing something powerful, but it's like a very linear powerful thing. And in that sense, it's easy to prepare for, but it's also like easy to see what that deck is doing and then like make meaningful decisions in game to beat it. And like a tier 3 deck would be like Pandas, in my opinion. Like, you know what Pandas is going to do, and like you can play around it like sufficiently just by like having Final Battle in your deck. But sometimes you just get clocked for 40 in there by a goddamn Panda. So what can you do?
Right. So with that framework in mind, and going off of what Ryan was saying of we're moving the power to a different spot, let me propose this scenario and see what you think. So let's say that Shaharazad was printed. So that the Shaharazad we know now wasn't printed. Instead, Shaharazad was printed one of these two ways. Where would you put it on the tier list? So Shaharazad version A is gets the Grimoire, dolls don't have quick cast, and then on the back side, on the front or back, on the back side says you get to put something back, and if you have all 5 stories, you get to put a Resonator from your deck, from your graveyard into the field. Like, so it has like the Grimoire 3 effect, I guess, but as the Grimoire 5. So like that's scenario 1. So on the front it's vanilla, but you have access to Grimoire. On the back you get to bounce something when it enters, and if you gave up all your stories, you get something from the deck, put it in the field. But no doll quick cast. So that's Sherry A.
Current Shaharazad.
So where would you
return
so where would you put
for Grimoire 0?
That's she does Grimoire 0 is bring something back from
Her,
grave.
her free ability is get a doll from the grave. Grimoire 3 is put a card on top of your deck. Grimoire 5 is get one from the deck.
So let's say that. So when she enters, so let's say on the flip side, she still doesn't have quick cast. She gets to grab a doll for 0, and then if you do 3, you get to put something back on top of your opponent's deck.
Okay.
Or let's even shift that to the 5, whatever. Like it has to, because it's that much removal or whatever. So like let's say that is the Sherry that we were printed. Where would you put that Sherry tier wise?
So fun fact, we had that Sherry show up in Collinsville. Derek M's list was functionally that. He played very few dolls, he played a bunch of stories, and he played a bunch of very powerful like green and then junk cards. And
sure.
He was first seed.
Right. So would you put that as a tier 1 deck?
That would be
or tier 0
at least
deck?
tier 1 and quite possibly tier 0.
So you think that deck would be tier 0? Despite the
I'm
fact that deck
possible.
like gets.
I think it's
despite the fact that you think it's tier 1.
I think if they
I would
every doll in the game right now, Shaharazad would still be tier 1.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's fine.
that's
That's the fine process, right? So now let me propose number 2, Sherry number 2, right? Sherry doesn't have an extra deck outside; it doesn't exist.
Okay.
But you get the dolls that have quick cast, and then in some other scenario to get like the pumping and stuff that still exists. And then when she flips, she just gets a doll from the deck to field.
Do we get Ava, and is she a 10/10?
That's what I'm saying is like they have some other way to get those stat pumps without the Grimoire.
I mean, so
it's
we
not
still have
necessarily
a 11/11 with quick cast. We still have a 2-mana 10/10 with quick cast. We still have all this stuff.
Sure. Would you call that tier 1 or tier 0?
I'm more inclined to put that in tier 2.
I don't.
The dolls are very underwhelming outside of Ava
Sure,
and
tier 2.
in some instances Patrol Card.
I
we
would
still get
argue
tier
that
2?
it's just hard incorrect. I saw a bunch of decks that just folded to not even to Ava, just to like doll audience, the 6/6 that pumps itself once. I saw a bunch of decks that just couldn't beat that at quick cast.
That's a bad deck. That's what you're describing.
No, I'm describing Keurig.
What were you saying?
No, I think if we get Dollmaker still, Dollmaker and Ava and all the other doll, like I think Dollmaker might.
I mean, like you could even say that like the Ava at max becomes 8/8 stat line, or like
a lot worse.
like Right. So, like, let's say Ava at max can be like an 8/8 by herself.
I just
right?
want to step
That
in
kind of
here.
thing.
Frank, you know that there's a doll audience for every deck, right? It's called Viola. Like, they just have a 6/6 at quick cast that gives +2/+2 with more upside.
And flying.
Like, every deck can play that. That's a card that exists.
Yeah, and
No.
no one's played it because we have these
Those
dolls.
Violas
No,
don't cantrip off of
Bad
all
card.
measures.
But so you would put this deck,
Call
this
it a bad
hypothetical
card. I've
version
heard,
of Sherry,
like, half
you
a
would put
dozen
her
other players talk
between
about it.
1 and 2.
I love that card, actually, but it's like, it's not as good as, like, the broken shit.
You're-
Yeah, I'm
So-
contradicting myself. I was trying to pull
So-
home, but anyway.
So you would
Like, what are you guys busy about? Like, Doll Maker is the thing that makes that card insane. Like, Viola is not the doll audience because it doesn't
Yes.
draw a card off of Doll Maker.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. That's
So
like my
what I'm
point.
hearing,
Like, the
before we
6/6
go
for
super
two.
deep, gentlemen, come back to me.
I'm back.
Come back to me, please.
Yeah.
So, what I'm hearing is generally that concept of Sherry, where she just has the quick cast for her archetype, but doesn't have the extra deck, is somewhere between tier 1 and tier 2. And tier 2, and the Sherry that has extra deck has access to the extra deck, but doesn't have the massive synergy boost for her archetype on the front, would also be tier 1, tier 2-ish.
I would put the one where
Tier
she has
1.
the extra deck at tier 1 to tier 0 still.
Yeah, that's where I'm landing. I think that the Grimoire version is just like way better, and it's because you look at the crazy.
Would you put it at tier 0 with what we currently have in the meta?
Who knows? Who knows? Like, how can we ever say that? That's,
Well, that's the thought experiment. That's the thought experiment. Is like in removing that
Like,
side
thinking
of
about like
Sherry.
just the like generic green-black control decks that I want to play, and like they're just all bad because they lose to Shaharazad. Well, now I get to play those decks as Shaharazad, and I don't feel like forced to play these garbage dolls and Puppet Maker because like they're just better than
Sure.
the other cards I want to play. But yeah,
Sure.
like if I could play Sherry and
Because
play
what-
like 4 Blazer, 4 Glint, like 2 Thought Control, like some other like
Right.
black white with the Forbidden Arts, just if I could just do that, I would have a blast. But Puppet Maker's better, so like
So what we currently have in these 10 rulers, from what we've seen so far, is the version of the Sherry that doesn't have a super huge synergy with her archetype, but has an extra deck.
yeah.
10 of
When
those.
you put it that
That's what
way,
we're seeing.
this terrifies me as much as Bremont is terrified. Actually, like you're convincing me that it's like
It's like I was wondering where you were going with this, Jeremy, because you were not.
No,
helping yourself
I don't know.
out.
I didn't know
it's
which way
the thought experiment.
I
It's
didn't know
like,
which
what
way
do
he
you
was
think
going.
about
I
this?
didn't know which way he was going.
Yeah.
So like that was just a concept that popped in my head, and I wanted to see what people thought. It doesn't terrify me nearly as much as it terrifies you guys.
I mean,
But
we have to wait and
I have
see what
long
else
been.
comes
I mean,
out.
you can go ask legitimately any ogre that I am like forever the optimist, and I don't get doomsday ever.
Can I ask
we don't
Fred?
need to ask Ogres for that.
But anyway, like I don't know. I mean, it's always good to theory craft, and it's always like the downside of we're theory crafting, but we really need to wait and see what the other cards do to really
Right.
make an informed
Exactly.
opinion. But like I have healthy optimism because I do think it's just an interesting new mechanic, not necessarily a broken new mechanic, and like I understand that it could go in that direction and that it seems to be like leaning towards that direction. But my biggest hope is that we have a bunch of viable cards, not broken cards, but like good and therefore like playable, and therefore we actually have meaningful decisions to make, and then we like are making these creative deck building decisions, and then America takes 8 of the top 8 spots at Worlds. That's what I really. There we go.
That's already given. I already predicted
I'll cheer you all on.
to a T.
I'll cheer you all on from the stream room. So, I think ultimately what this means is next week when we do this again, we need to talk about what runes we will have had spoiled between now and then, because we will have 5 of the rulers with like 2 of their set, at least 1 of each of their in the set runes, and all 5 of their structure deck runes. So we will have a full gambit of half of the rulers with what their structure deck runes look like and what the level and kind of direction that their set runes might look like. So I think that's a conversation that we can have for next week.
However, this may sound like
go ahead.
more than any of that, I also think it will importantly give us enough of a sample to start actually looking at what are they doing with the divinity cost, because that seems like their most important, like from the design perspective, that seems like their most important balancing mechanic. And so how well are they using divinity is a really important question.
Yeah, I would agree.
I get to do math.
So, let me see. Our question is... This is our fun question for the week. Okay, this is an interesting one. Our questions for this week We could just do the karaoke one again, I guess. I could give the ones that. So I'll give this to this. So we have 3 questions technically.
Okay.
I have the 2 that Jeff gave us, or we could do the karaoke one and give that one, which was which is the best dark elf in terms of looks? Which Welser crest is your favorite? Or the karaoke question.
I mean, I will take those 2 fun ones. Those are right up my alley.
You know, I need to go last. I need to go do some quality research on these.
Are we answering all 3 of them?
All 3 of them.
You don't have to answer all 3. No, you don't have to answer all 3. Which one would we like to do?
Oh,
I would like to do the dark elf one.
Karaoke. I don't even know where to begin with that one. I have paid attention to approximately 4 dark elves.
Karaoke. Karaoke. Bremont.
karaoke.
Karaoke. It's been voted. So the question was, this was submitted to us by Mike Rance a couple weeks ago, which was, if you were to take a character in Force of the Will to karaoke, who would you take and what would they sing? And I will go first, and I would take Lilius Petal, and he would sing While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Can you sing it for us? I don't know that song.
Can I sing it?
Can you
really?
play it?
Never
Can
heard
you
that
have
song?
the technology to play it?
I have the technology. Let's get my rights removed. Let's do it.
Demonetized.
I think you're fine with a 10-second clip. I'm pretty sure that's it's fair use or something like that.
It's the Beatles. Seriously?
I mean, I vaguely remember what this is, but for a younger audience, this is a children's card game, Jeremy. I'm not sure.
I'm just a wee tot.
Totally hyperfixated on Top Deck?
I'm thinking if I want to change my answer from the last time we did this. Not that anyone in the chat would know that. Oh,
Here we go.
I kind of thought you
So
were
mournful.
up on
yeah, I thought I was gonna play it on his
No.
I do know this song.
I'm never really a Beatles fan. I don't know this at all.
I'm not ashamed to admit that I'm a little bit too young for the Beatles. That makes me feel good, at least a little bit.
It's just,
do love
it's
Across
like
the Universe,
in the
though.
storyline,
Like the
in the
movie.
storyline of the show, he's just in the storyline of the lore, he's just like, well, I'm cursed for all for eternity, and anyone I come next to has to die, but I can't die, so
That sounds alright.
here I am.
But yeah, I think it's a good pairing.
Brandon,
Brandan.
I would
a
take
look
out
left, Brandon.
I Mule.
Okay.
He's a little bit depressed and lonely and kind of clustered. So I'd take her out so she could have a good time, and she would sing "Bring Me to Life" by Evanescence, because it's just like the classic.
This is.
Can you sing it for us a little bit, Brandon?
This is what I came here for.
2000s emo song, and she just seems very emotional and kind of just needs to get that out. I'm not singing Evanescence.
sing it for us?
No, you could just give us a little taste. You got Jeremy playing it on his phone. I'm gonna belt my song, so you gotta just give us a little bit.
Unlike some obscure Beatles song, I guarantee every one of our listeners that lives in the United States knows "Bring Me to Life" by Evanescence. So I don't feel like
You see, the problem is that every Evanescence song just blends together in my head. So you saying the title means nothing. I really need you to sing
Evanescence song. I literally think this is the only one, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm just having some trouble remembering this specific one. I loved Evanescence. I listened to all their albums. If you could just sing them just a little bit.
Okay,
so I could
Ryan,
get which
what's your
specific
song?
one.
What's your
My
song?
No, Frank can go ahead and go. I have to go last. You know how I do.
You
I already have
don't get
mine
to go
picked.
last every week.
Yeah, I have
You
mine
don't
picked
get to go
already.
last every
I've had it
week.
picked for 2 weeks, but in the tradition and in the sense that I continue to go last in the future, I think Frank should go.
Okay, Frank, what you got for us, bud?
So I would take out Zero of the 6 sages. Pretty much every card art has her looking fairly somber or fairly serious. She seems like a fairly get stuff done lady, which means that when it's time to relax, she's going to absolutely get into it 100%. So she's going to go out to karaoke, and she's going to sing "Chop Suey" by System of a Down. And so she's just going to be up there going, "I cry when angels deserve to die." You're welcome.
See, why don't you have that level of commitment, Bremont? I'm disappointed in you.
Because he has more shame than I do.
I have none.
That's fair.
He has a reasonable human's amount of shame.
Ryan, that leaves just you.
This is the story of a girl. She cried a river and drowned the whole world. And while she looks so sad, especially in her full art, I absolutely love her when she smiles. It's Kaguya 4. I would sing my heart out for this girl. Are you kidding me? This is one of my favorite rulers that I ever played, and she's just the saddest human being alive in all of Force. Well, everyone's dying around her. I think she died at one point, but she came back. It's no big deal. And it's just, she's so sad, but you just want to see her smile because then she's actually winning a game, and that's all I really want.
Fair enough. So there you have it. There are our 4 choices. Down below in the description is a link to the Force of Will Ruler School Facebook page where the poll will be created either later tonight or tomorrow. We'll be sure to blast it out, and you can go vote to see which one of us has the best answer for that. So currently the crown is being split between me and Frank after being pulled off of Ryan. So he has to see if Ryan can steal it back again, or if Brandon can finally get it. For the
he had 3
Finally,
had it for like 3.
last time.
I've been off my game. Hopefully this can take it down. Vote for me, guys.
Well, someone already says that Ryan wins in your book. But for that, I think we can take maybe we'll keep having the conversation, but if you guys in the chat want to give us any questions that you have for myself or any of these fine gentlemen about the game, any of the topics we talked about, or the future of what you think about runes, or any questions or about any particular card that you want us to talk about, we'll stay on for maybe about 10 minutes.
Sure.
I don't know. What about you guys?
I'm trying to
Sound
cheat
good?
by using a cat in my picture here. I think I got it.
I believe in the Force Will
Franklin.
community. Most of them know that those are evil creatures.
This is the community that loves Cheshire Cat wearing booty pants. I just put
Cats
That
on cats on
those
cats.
last 2
on this
words
cat.
are the important part of that Cheshire Cat, sir. I've
You
not
always
heard
always gotta
anyone
look at it. They could
talking
be wearing
about that actual cat face in the background is anything other than trolling.
So Travis and Samara asks, do you think Gil is tier 1 after rotation?
Yeah.
Yeah. As of right
Yes.
now. We know it's one of the best cluster decks, right?
One. If we're only talking tier 1, I think Gil's tier 1 right now. I think Gil's great.
Yeah.
And it loses not much. I guess it loses Severing Winds, which actually is kind of a kick in the nuts for that deck. But
it also
Other-
this cluster also gave it another free, not a free cancel spell, but I was watching at side events this weekend, and someone was just using Gil to just get to go find Arrival of the Hero as just a free kill spell, and so it's losing Severing Winds, but it just got a free spell that it gets to tutor, and a pretty significant.
That's fair.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's still very much... I mean, that deck relies more on green without really caring as much on splash colors than any other ruler right now.
I've also seen
Time Spinning Witch kind of, right? She's very, 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 very heavy water, and then kind of relies a little bit on splash colors, so I think that's why she's does really well post. But Gil even more so is 90% of my deck's green, so whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I've also seen one of my locals, one of Brandon's teammates or former teammates, just play a version that's all basic skill, and it didn't even seem like it lost too many beats playing that way.
there's battle, right? And that's a pretty big one.
Yes, it's true. That's something all control decks are gonna have to adapt to, is just needing an actual fairly costed answer to stuff going wide.
Or they just reprint Final Battle.
No,
The Last
do not
Thunder.
do that.
The Last
There it
Thunder
is.
is one of my
Last
favorite cards. That card, I so hope that card ends up getting good. It sucks to me that the blue archetype we've seen is just swarming the board, and I'm I want a blue deck where I can play the Last Thunder and just have one board wipe for 3 mana. I don't even care that it's sorcery speed.
Both of our blue rulers are resonator based.
I know. I'm so upset. I'm
Um,
absolutely, and it's triple
let's
blue.
see.
You have to be a dedicated blue deck to play this goddamn card, and they gave us Swarm in blue. This is absolute
I
nonsense.
look forward to hearing Aaron say how much he's tired of hearing you talk about the Last Thunder.
Next question we had was from Fairbrands59. How many Master Runes do we think are going to be printed in this cluster?
One.
I think that there will be probably, I would imagine, probably somewhere between 15 to 20 total. And that's
full of 10, right?
I think it has to be multiple 10, yeah. Unless they do a master room
Yeah,
where your
so
ruler
20.
has to be red and your ruler has to be blue.
right.
your ruler
That's
has
what
to
I'm
be white.
That's what I'm thinking. They could go that way.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying 15 to 20. There could be
But you're
a
saying,
Master
so you're saying
Rune.
that each color and/or ruler gets one more after the first wave?
That terrifies me because I hope that master runes are better than normal runes, and I don't want to have 2 of those in my story deck because it sounds
I would
terrifying.
I think if a second one gets printed, there would probably be a ruling that says you can only have 1 master rune.
That's so.
I don't think so. With their specific intent stated is like using later runes to try and like balance out like representation. I think I don't necessarily think they're going to give us a balance. You know, all the colors and rulers are going to have the same amount, and I don't think they're going to put that limit because they're going to try and put a second master rune to help out the weakest ruler, so that ruler has 2 master runes.
Maybe.
Or like their master rune is
think,
unplayable, so they make one that's actually playable. That's what
I think 15 to 20 total is probably the most.
Yeah, it does sound like an accurate number, though. I would agree with that.
Next question from David Hernandez. Do you think Black Moonbeam should be banned in Wanderer?
No.
No?
No. It's fine.
No,
I love playing Devil's Advocate. I'm trying to think if I can get behind this one. In a sense, like, it's pretty annoying to want to play a J Ruler thing, and then you just get killed at chase, like unchaseable speed. But I also hate J Ruler decks more than I love playing Devil's Advocate. So you caught me at an interesting crossroads in my own personal philosophies, but I have to say no.
I also love J Ruler decks and played them a ton when Black Moonbeam was around, and it was fine. And like all the reasons why Black Moonbeam were printed are still there.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see. Whoflung128 asks, should Force of Will entertain the idea of a commander-like packaging for Epic Stories? If not, what can they do to help the second market? 1, Epic Stories isn't officially even acknowledged by the company. Jeff legitimately just started playing it casually himself, and Japan doesn't do it. So, like, that's not going to happen. And I would say, secondly, I honestly think the secondary market is, like, doing pretty okay.
It's, like, better than it has almost ever been, I would say.
Yeah,
it's
like,
surprising.
The secondary market's in a pretty good spot right now.
Yeah, they adjusted the pull ratios. They lowered the number of rares and super rares everyone's pulling, and they adjusted the extra slot, which has been stamps and then textures, etc., to be fully split between all the stuff, so that it's like actual foils as far as the secondary market is concerned. And both of those help make it to where the like regularly high value cards are actually retaining some of their value, and then the actual like chase or foily cards, there's actually few enough of them and they're spread out enough that they can actually retain some value just because there aren't a million stamped copies of X super rare.
Right. And then I think that's from what I've seen with card prices and like speculation and like the health and cost of, like, someone told me before that I'm actually seeing like veritable differences in rarities now. Like, I was trying to get my last stamped Lorite and some other couple cards too, and I was like, okay, so how much is like stamped Lorite now, like full art, like watermarked, I think is what people were calling it, and then it was like 18, and I was like, oh, okay, well, how much is regular full art Lorite? It's like 8, and I was like, an actual decent price, like an actual decent price difference between 2 different rarities of the same card? What is happening? Like, I think we're moving in a good direction with it, so that's pretty good. Oscar from the TCG Scrubs, what's up, Oscar?
Hey.
Asks, this is a conversation actually Frank and Brandon that we started to have in person in Denver, is will Epic Stories only have 1 rune deck shared between 2 rulers who both have 10, and how will it work? 10 plus 10 divinity or just 10 divinity?
Wait for the CR. We have to see A, how the CR defines divinity, B, what how powerful this would be. This is actually, we were talking about, this is actually a scenario that the CR does need to define, because you can have a divinity ruler, your opponent can be AU, your opponent can cast the AU resonator and become a copy of your ruler with 10 divinity, and then you can play a brain control effect and take control of their AU, and then you can have 2 rulers with divinity 10. So if that allows you to go above your divinity limit, then 2 rulers with divinity will count as divinity 20. But this is actually something that the rules have to define, so we don't actually have to pick this.
Rules didn't in this case. It's always possible they would, and so we don't want to like put out what our initial thoughts are and then be like, oh, we have to walk those back real fast when the actual CR comes out. Because like an easy example would be like the extra deck, like how many cards can be in there. It's actually defined in the CR. So if like we'd had to define like if we'd had to like if these were all coming out at the same time for the first time, we're like, oh well, since you've got 2 of them, you have a double extra deck, and then the CR defines like no, it's like this. Suddenly we've overwritten one of the rules that we didn't intend to.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll have 2 questions real quick. We'll kind of end it there. We'll do Sam's and Joe's. So Sam Culmer asks, now that the enter word is being changed and triggers being a keyword, do you think they are planning to reprint a lot of the used old cards with updated text for Wanderer? I don't think this company ever produces something, at least where it is right now. I don't think it's in a place where it can or should do a Wanderer reprint set.
They do.
I'm actually gonna step in for this one. I did watch the
other than the
podcast where like Jeff talked about this a lot, and like the only reason that enters being errated is like basically for consistency between casters and Force of Will, and it was like apparently Japan cares so little about Wanderer, and that's like the main reason that Jeff is allowed to do pretty much anything he wants with the format, is because like they don't even see it as like a real thing. Like he knows that like other regions really want to play Wanderer formats, but Japan just doesn't care about it at all. So he gets his own reins to do that kind of thing, and like erratating enter to affect any enter the battlefield is something that literally only affects Wanderer, but also like has some better clarity for the cards coming out right now. So that's kind of why he's allowed to do is just say, hey, all enter abilities now get to have when a card enters the battlefield. So I don't think that it's stemming from any plans to reprint anything. It's literally just Jeff gets to make consistency between games and also has the power to do it without really impacting anything except for making Nyarlathotep the best card in the game finally. Yes.
And then kind of the last question, Joe Bay, how do we think the format will look without dual stones?
Bad.
Monocolored. You ever like taken like a colorblind test and just like looked at something and you can't even see any numbers? That's what I'm expecting. I don't know if that analogy.
I'm expecting at best, quote unquote, like main color, splash color. I don't think we will ever, at least with this move, I don't think we will ever see these like perfect 50-50 splits in color ever.
I would argue that all they need to do, because we have 5 rulers left to go, all we need to do is have one of these rulers like either we need a rune that finds you an addition and puts it into play for fairly cheap, or we need a ruler whose master rune is a very cheap put a addition into play.
Wait a minute.
Because we have tons of color fixing and additions right now, and if a ruler makes that hyper consistent, that ruler will like the way Time Spinning Witch will already be able to use the 2-drop that filters and the 1-drop chromatic star. There will all you need is a ruler that makes those additions very consistent or very much cheaper, and you will simply have that ruler become the de facto multicolor deck. Because
I think we have a special guest joining us.
People love multicolor and people love greed. I say this as Brandon's greed in the 7 Deadly Sins.
This was way cooler on my screen than it was on stream, because for me, Jeff just appeared in the center and it was this giant red Discord thing, and I'm like, Anonymous has come for us. They heard us talking about Force of Will, and then it's just boom, Jeff's face appears.
What's going on, guys?
Hey, buddy.
What's going on?
We were just kind of wrapping things up.
Oh, my
How
bad.
are you?
Not too bad.
No, it's okay.
Finished one meeting and got 15 minutes before I have to jump into another.
Yeah, we were just talking about what the last question was what we thought the format would kind of look like without dual stones. And kind of the thought was, Frank seems to think that we're just missing a couple kind of key cards for the main deck or a couple kind of runes to make that a little bit more, there's some true dualness possible. But I was saying how I think kind of at best we get like a 70-30 for at best. Where it's now here's your main color, here's your 1 splash color. We can't do these here's your 2 main colors and splash a third. That's not really possible.
The problem with that kind of stuff though is that you always end up being weaker than just a true monocolor deck, because you have the 30% chance of missing your turn 1 broken card in your color. It's just almost not worth it.
That's what I'm saying. At best. Yeah. But I think most of we're gonna see monocolor era.
I'll be honest. So, when I was doing testing, I was trying to channel my inner Miles Brothers, kind of how can I break this with something that I just didn't foresee. And so there's yokai support. I don't know if that's been shown yet.
I don't think so, no.
All right.
Excuse me? Yokai support?
Anyways,
I mean, no, yeah, we talked about it. It's been on, like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We talked about
it freely, sorry.
Here's that one card. There's that one card. It's great. It's great. Yeah, it's great.
Anyways, so, like, one of the cards gives you access to, like, a win package, so to speak. And I think I've talked about before, like, I love the idea of, you guys remember Celestial Wing and Lucifer?
Yeah.
Or, like,
yeah,
Mom and Dad, Riza and Melder, like, you would essentially build your deck around these win packages, so to speak, and almost every color has something like that now, especially for the new rulers that kind of works with them. But the part that I'm interested in is if, obviously between, like, for example, Hanzo and Chamimi, that's not so difficult to switch as long as the card isn't their master rune. But the question then becomes, if the cost is not super color prohibitive, is an option like that worth splashing to take another color's kind of win condition? Now, some of them are super color prohibitive, and there's no way you're going to splash them just because it's like color. So there's no way that's going anywhere else. Others are only a single color, and so with something like the Magic Stone of Omniscience, I can't say the actual word, omniscience, Jesus. And so that gives you an increased cost of having to cost the extra one will to filter, but if that win condition is viable enough, is it worth splashing for something like that?
But doesn't Omniscience only filter for runes?
Yes.
So there are winning condition runes, is what I'm hearing. I'm not hearing.
Oh. And yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is one of the cards we had for the Gen Con. It's a 2-mana 6/6 with quick cast that's double green, and then it produces a mana of any color to, like, play any chant. We were talking earlier about how, like, there's a pretty strong 1-cast white rune. There's a couple pretty strong 1-cast red runes. Like, is green just going to kind of end up being the best color again, strictly because it's the only color so far that has access to, like, being able to play other colors?
And has 2 copies of that card, because there was a 3-drop that does exactly that, only produces 2 in Brea Cluster.
New Frontiers, Cecile, or Seal or whatever. Yep. So I will say that I don't think this is, I mean, we're like 2 months or 2 weeks out before you see the full list. So I'll share. That is the only green will producing card in the set that I can recall.
That just so many of them.
Called it.
Green got one of the, like, 2 things that green got taken away was most of its card draw and its ramping. And I think you guys know that design does a lot of top-down stuff, and so the idea is essentially this ninja gives you a little bit of will, like, to play your ninjutsu of any element kind of thing. So it's not so much, and that's why there are so many restrictions on the use of that will rather than just being a new Melfi kind of thing, is green no longer has the ramp. And so actually I was just looking at V3 stuff, and there's a card that I really don't want to see printed because I'll have to, like, ban it immediately, but at the same time I want it to exist just for everything, like, for the purposes of Valhalla, I want it to exist, but at the same time, I don't want them to print it. So I'm up in the air right now. So maybe in March next year, you'll see what I'm talking about. But anyways, going back to the kind of topic, the idea, and I know it's very scary words, and I've heard you guys talk about it before, is that green always has this, like, the jack of all trades, master of none, and that's never been true. It's been the jack of all trades, the master of everything, and it's been like, what the fuck? Whereas now there is, so for example, they have counter spells, but they're not good, so to speak, for the most part, and it is powerful, and I see Brandon over here looking at it like,
Brandon's face.
What? Like,
that's
yes,
just his
face. The availability of permanent counterspells is relevant, but they're under the ruse that you're essentially, like, I'm going to backtrack here for a second. The reason why Otherworldly Dreams is broken, among many other things, is being a one-cost answer to everything. And while, yes, you can play another card off of it, the fact that if there's any card you can't deal with at that current moment, paying 1 green and I don't have to deal with that anymore, and now the burden is on the caster of the original spell to have something of equal or reasonable value to play off of that, is just, that card is oppressive, and it essentially means that you need to lower the cost of your threats to equal the threat cost of answers. So you can't have high value threats because there are low cost answers to that. And so by increasing the cost of answers in the format, you are now more validated in choosing higher cost threats if they present such that. So if you spend 4 will to counter my 4 will Gil because I'm playing him in a deck that isn't running Gil or other Gil, the uncounterable version, like you've traded a card for a card, and we've also traded will for will. So you had to essentially waste a turn to counter that spell. Now, if you're playing it from the Rune deck, it's literally a 4 for 4. If you're doing it from your hand, you're paying a card in your hand for a card in my hand. I think, like, one of the notes that I've asked is that for the time being, let's decrease the power level of counter spells to some degree and bring back a little bit more interactivity in the actual game state. And I think it's interesting when, I don't know how many of you guys are Magic players or have been in the past, but like
Me and Frank.
there was always a joke in Legacy that Legacy players don't know how to do combat math, or excuse me, Vintage and Legacy players really, because most of what we were dealing with was combo decks. And so we were dealing with Show and Tell and Grizzlebrand and Storm and Tess. And so we're dealing with all these kind of decks that didn't really care about the field, and it wasn't very grindy. It was just we're playing Russian roulette, and eventually someone's just going to get shot in the face and be dead. And there's very little trying to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's why you have Force of Will and Daze and all Misdirect and Flusterstorm, etc. So you have all these very powerful answers because the threats are so immediate. And most new players' reaction to Legacy is that format sucks, everyone dies on the second turn. And that's not the case, but that's the perception that comes from it. And so more recently, creature-based combat has become a very big thing in Magic, and it has always been in Yu-Gi-Oh! And
Pokemon.
What's the other game? Pokemon, thank you. And so I think it's interesting to move that pillar around some degree. Like, we've essentially been in a format where control players, for the most part, have been riding high since Prisia, and Fox was always kind of there to shut that noise down. And prior to that, there was Lance and Valentina, and prior to that, it was fucking Bahamut, and it was just like it's always been an incredible aggro or control-based format with scatterings of combo, but there's almost always been very good answers to combo, whether it be counterspells or Lorite, etc. Like, there's always been fairly reasonable answers to combo. And whenever combo gets too good, like my predecessor banned Law of Silence for good reason, but like, so it's always kept those kind of things in check. I think we are, and I've seen your assessments kind of going towards a very grindy mid-game kind of feel. And while I don't think it's good to reside in any one place for too long, I think it is healthy to change the dynamic of New Frontiers and to kind of force people into new metas that they're not comfortable with. One of the things, I'm going to kind of transition here for a second, is one of the things I think that failed about the ban list in June, was that my initial goal was not to completely change the meta as it was, but just to bring Sherry back to a reasonable level and actually looking more broad scale across all kinds of games, League of Legends, Pokemon, any kind of modern day game. When they make a ban list, for the most part, if it's seen as viable, it completely changes the metagame and changes the experience that players are having. And in that regard, I think the ban list failed because it did reduce Shahazarad's percentage by like 20 or 30 points, but it didn't lower it to a point where it changed the feel of the metagame. And that's where the failure of the list is that it did not succeed in actually changing the metagame. And for that, I've said kind of to the team that like this is something to take note of, is that the purpose of a ban list is twofold. One, to kind of rein in anything that is ruining the player experience, but part two is it needs to change the metagame so that the game feels fresh, it feels new, so the good players have to brew. Because I've commented before, like, everyone that I'm talking to right now is a very good player, top of the top. And it's, you guys can play a, like, let's say a 7-star deck and still win. And so there's not incentive for you to create something new if your old deck can be modified slightly and still be just as viable or almost just as viable. There's no push for you to change decks completely, because the majority of your toys and the power of, for example, Shaharazad or Fox or Prisia is still available, unless the major, like we saw as soon as Fox lost Griffin, all of a sudden he became tier 2 kind of thing. Like, it was very clear that he was dependent on that stone ramp for basically everything else he wanted to do. This Prisia, I couldn't find a viable way to neuter that deck without removing the ruler itself, and so the ruler left. And so there are certain things that Shaharazad has that just can't be taken away. Quick cast dolls. All of them, their stats are ridiculous. Her judgment has so much going on. Like, I was thinking about it. She could be a one-sided ruler, and she would still be good. So,
Jeff,
what's up?
you're gonna miss your meeting.
I'm loving this. Don't be telling him, Jeremy.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I would love to continue to have this conversation. So why don't we do this, and we'll have you come back next week and join us again next
Jeremy's
week for a longer
fun
conversation.
sucker.
What are you doing?
I also
was-
want to
I
go
was
to bed,
loving this. Yeah, hold
and we've
on.
been doing this for an hour and a half.
The most
so.
enthralled I've ever been on this podcast.
I know. I'm like checking the clock, I'm
leave him
"Hey, he's
hanging.
gonna miss this
It's-
meeting.
it's a-
That's gonna suck for Jeff, but I'm sitting here having a great time.
Go on, keep going.
We'll have you come back next week and talk to us more, okay, buddy?
Yes, sir. I gotta run, guys. I'll talk to you later. I'll see you.
All right, the teaser for next week.
All right,
See you,
guys.
Jeff. Good to see you.
Thanks, buddy. So
Make some
there you
questions.
have it. We'll get some questions for you, buddy.
Jeremy.
So there you have it. Sorry to be the fun sucker of the group, but that was a impromptu visit by the one, the only Jeff Finnegan, our global liaison, dropping some great knowledge, and we can all just sit here and be enthralled. Get you a group of Force of Will players who looks at you like all of us look at Jeff when he talks. But until next week, guys, we will be coming back next week at Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, doing this live again, and you will be able to watch this whole thing on demand on the channel as soon as it gets processed by YouTube and their weird processing times. But thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We look forward to coming back next week to do this. If you liked it as a live stream, let us know, and maybe how we can improve it. Go ahead and go again to the different links to the different pages and potential participate in the poll, considering maybe being a patron for the channel. And until next time, this has been the Teacher's Lounge featuring myself and Ryan Miles.
This is the story of